Hi, welcome back to CS170 fall session. We're on to week number 4. I have the student schedule up in front of me here. So we have continuation of chapter 4 for HTML. And actually, chapter 1, I kind of hit on it a little bit on the first week of class, but that's part of your readings. And then we have chapter 9. And chapter 9 is kind of like, sort of like another one of those reading, conceptual type of thing. So we'll hit that a little bit in a separate lecture. And then if you look at your assignment, you're on to advanced HTML. And then you have for your recitation also advanced HTML. Okay, so I think you can probably look at this white area. You can kind of see where the emphasis is for the first exam. Okay, you have like the numeric conversions, obviously, and then you basically have the HTML, right? And then the other bits that you add on here is things about how search engines work, networks, a little bit of like computer history, and that rounds out what you're going to see for the first exam. Probably a lot of you have been taking the quizzes, so you have like the quizzes that will help you prepare a little bit, a little bit of short answer, fill in the blank, that type of stuff, and multiple choice, okay? And then you have like, obviously the mechanics, whether it's like doing the numeric conversions, showing the work, right? And I think a lot of you did the extra credit for that. You were able to show the work, which is reasonable. And then you have the HTML. HTML might be something like where we show you a page and say, okay, what's the HTML to generate, let's say a table or something like that. So we'll cover that a little bit more. Obviously, we have like, review session. If you need to talk to me during office hour or talk to the TAs during their lab hours, office hours, hopefully we can answer any questions you have. Right, so we're really kind of getting through this week will be the first week's material. First exam's material. Okay, as I said in prior lectures, all of this white stuff here will be on your first exam, which is coming up here in week 6. Okay, and some of the details on the timing and how that will work will be coming out shortly. Okay, all right, so that's where we are on the exam. So let's continue on here. Okay, so you'll see the stuff in my section, first, 5th and 13th, and then I'll be creating a new section shortly once I record the second part of the chapter 4. Okay, so here is chapter 4. So what does chapter 4 add on to like what we discussed last week in terms of HTML, right? Well, let's see. Okay. So there's this idea of styles, right? So there's the styles like kind of in line with, the HTML that you're doing, like the tags and stuff like that. And then there's like the CSS, right? Which is like the cascading style sheets that I mentioned before. And, really those type of things, the cascading style sheet, like I said, is really how you scale up, right? Because you're not going to really do inline styles all the time, because that would take you forever if you had to, set up a lot of HTML pages. So what you'd like to do is have these style sheets that allow you to apply the same style across whatever objects, across however many web pages that you want to do. So we'll go into that in a little bit. Okay. All right. So this is the one point here. This is like an external file. You just kind of include it at the top, and you'll see an example of that shortly. Okay. And I believe we talked about this before. And then what I just mentioned, inline styling. right? So inline styling is something that you would do if it's just like kind of a one-off type of thing. But as you scale up, you're probably going to be working more with CSS files. Okay. So this basically just talks about styles, right? And then you can see this link here. It talks about the styles in general. Obviously, since this is kind of telling you how to make different things look on the page, it's kind of an important thing, right? So that's why you have like these dedicated topics to it. So, take a look at that, see if there's any questions on that, right? But you look at these, it's kind of self-explanatory, right? Between, what color is the background, what color is the text, what type of font, the sizing of the font. Do you want the stuff to align to the left, to the right, top, bottom, right? Same thing with the picture, right? Okay. And the other thing you look at is how do you specify the style, right? So it's this idea of like kind of pairs of information, right? So in this case, let's say the first, what I'll call attribute, color, you want to set it to be red. Okay. All right. So before this lecture, you didn't have this part. I missed a quote here. So you didn't have this part here. Okay. You would have this part, and this part, and then it would just be the text that you would see. But once you put in like style, right? So style, and then you say, what do I want to set? Well, I want to set the color to be red. Well, what else can I be doing? Well, I could be doing like the size, let's say. Okay. All right. So let's take a look further down at the next one here. So here we also have style. Note the quote here. All right. And then we had the color red. And then look, we put like a little semicolon here. Right. And then we said, what's something else we want to set? Well, we want to set the background color to be green. Okay. So note like the pattern that we're following here. Okay. First, you say, I'm going to play around with the style. I'm going to set the style. And then within the quotes, these double quotes, then you say, what do I want to set? Well, I want to set the attribute color to be red. I want to set the background color to be green. And then I want to set the font size to be 25. Okay. And then you'll get whatever the result is down at the bottom here. Okay. And so oftentimes when you say you're doing stuff in line, this is what it's going to look like. And you'll use something that's a tag, right? In this case, it was a bold, right, for a B, but it could have been an I for italics, right? So you just find like a convenient tag that happens to be associated with the text in this case, that you want to do something with the style. And then you put in this style and it does that. Okay. Actually, while I'm here, maybe I'll do something here and just see if we can kind of do it on the screen. All right. So I have the HTML5 editor. And let's go back to here. And I'll just play around with this one. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to put it back over to here. All right. So let me take this part out. So this is what you saw from like last week, right? So last week you would just do something and say, okay, I want to bold it, right? So this is bold, right? Now, we don't want to put that guy in there. Let's get rid of that. And let's get rid of that. So that's one of the bad things about this HTML5 editor. If I play around with it on the right side, it starts to insert HTML on the left side that I don't want yet. All right. So now I set it to be red. and you can see it's red here, okay? And then let me take this background color to be green. And don't forget the semicolons. If you lose out on semicolons, that's not going to be good. So make sure you include semicolons in there. So I have my semicolon, I put that in there, and you can see it became the green background. Okay. Let's see. All right. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Okay. So you can kind of see what we mean by style here, right? You take whatever standard HTML element here, and I don't know why this switched to P. I'm going to put this back to B and put this back to B like that. Okay. All right. So I used a bold and then I put in the style. I set the color, both the color of the text and the color of the background. And I also played around with the font size. Okay. All right. So hopefully that gives you like a feel for it. You play around with it yourself. This is something you want to make sure you understand. So you try it out on your own. Okay. Well, so now I was playing around with bold, right? You could have done italics or whatever, right? But let's say for whatever reason, you had some text there and you didn't have anything to stick it into, right? You didn't even have like a P, like for a paragraph or something like that. Then you can use this span. All the span does is just provides a place for you to stick style into, right? So you use this span tag. It's almost like a container for it to hold the attributes you want to put in, right? So in this case, you want to put the style, color, and you want to do turquoise, okay? And in this case, you're doing this letter by letter, right? So you have the Veni, Witty, Wiki, right? So you have to look at each one and they put a span around each one, right? And like I said, the only purpose for this span is to allow you to hold these little color settings for your style, okay? All right, so now you say, well, okay, I have a lot of text that I'm going to play around with. I don't really want to have to set this in line for all over the place, right? So how can I make my life a little bit easier, for whatever web page I have? This is where you would go into the head. So remember, for HTML document, you have a head and then you have a body, right? So you have the head up here. And then within the head, there's different things you can put in the head, and we'll get into that when we get into JavaScript and stuff. But for style, this is what you would do, right? So you have the style tag here. Within the style, you can set these things, right? So what is this doing here? In this case, you're saying for the body, which is down below the head, right? For the body, you want to set the background color to be this color, dark slate gray, okay? And then you also want to do something where every time you have a paragraph, you're going to set the color to be light yellow. And every time you want to do like H1, right? You remember what H1, H2 to H6 would be. Every time you see H1, this is what you want. You want the text to be gold. You want the text alignment to be the center. And then you want H2 to have like a color of dark orange. You can tell there's going to be a very colorful page, right? It's going to be crazy, right? But this is just for illustrative purpose, okay? So these are the different things that you can put into the style. It's really based on the tag, right? From the body all the way down to like H1. It could be every time you do bold or something like that. Whatever tag you can think of, you set that up here. And that means every time you use that tag, you'll get those style attributes, okay? And so if you were going into like that sample HTML doc and you were to have this style in there in the head, then you started using these different tags, you'll see some differences here, right? So what will happen here? In this case, you have this, right, which is what they're using down here as the P. But in line, you're going to have this. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that this will override this. So this one, if you don't do anything, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get light yellow. Okay. But once you go into the body part, if you go in line and you put in whatever color you want to put in this case, red, this will override whatever this is. If you don't put this in here, then it's going to use the light yellow. Okay. And then the CSS file really just takes this one step further, kind of going up, right? Inline is the lowest level. And then using a style tag is the next level. And then CSS, using a CSS file, is the next one. And so what you would do, again, look, in the head section of the HTML document, you're going to just create this line here. Okay. And you know, in this case, they just call it a test.css, right? And this will be what you're knowing as a CSS style sheet. Okay, so that's what that is. Okay, so like it says, right? So you take all your CSS entries into one file, and then let's say you have 5 pages, 10 pages, 100 pages. All they have to do is load up this one style sheet, and they're going to have all the same behavior, right? It saves you a ton of time, right? And make sure that if you decide you want to change the look and feel of something, you can change it all over the place just in one shot. You'll change it here, and then anything that looks at it, any page that looks at it, it's all going to change. So it's pretty useful when you're looking at managing a very big website, let's say. Okay. So yeah, this is taking all of these different things here in the style tag here. And then within the body, it's basically taking it in here, and then you'll see the output here on the right hand side. Okay. So here, like so, you're basically going to take whatever you defined up here. So let's say title for my page testing style. Where's that at? That's over here. And you can see the color is yellow. Oh, wait, okay, H1, gold, yellow, golds. I guess it's a little bit subtle, but you can see the difference between yellow and gold up here. Okay. So I'll pause there for a second. You can take a look, see if that makes sense to you. Okay. Now notice there's one bit here at the bottom where it says class test and test 2. Okay. And then it kind of refers to it here. So you don't have to worry about this, right? So as far as you're concerned for this class, all you have to worry about is maybe something like this, okay? But since we're here and it's kind of showing up on the screen, you can just know what this means here, right? And see how it's being used, right? It's just another way of setting your style, right? Where this one is actually pretty simple. You're not really saving too much, right? So you see this class test here, right? P dot class test, and then you're setting a color to be rosy brown. Okay. Now, if you go down to here, you just say, well, okay, I have the P, which is the paragraph, but then you just saying, well, I'm going to set it to be this style, right? Which is the color rosy brown. Since there's only one thing that you put in there, like you didn't save that much, right? You you could have just said the same thing. You could have said the style and then color equals to rosy brown, right? So not a whole heck a lot of savings there, right? So you could have done the same thing up here, okay? So I guess there's two things. One, you can choose to, you can see how you have the P here and you have the color yellow, okay? So basically you're just allowing yourself to have multiple styles on top of like the P, right? So you have this general P right here. This is the default setting. And then if you want to kind of override that, you would do class test and test two, right? Now, like I said, because there's just these one attribute that you're setting, you're not really saving a whole heck of a lot over like just doing it online, inline. But, you know, you are saving something because it is like you're still representing this in one place up in the header, okay? Number two, probably you're going to do more than just set the color here. Maybe you have the color, you want to do the font or something like that. And then when I say class test, then maybe it's, you start to save yourself more work, right? Because then you're picking up like a whole bunch of attributes, or at least a few attributes that you're setting, okay? So for the purpose of like your own HTML pages or whatever, I wouldn't worry too much about this. You're not gonna have to worry too much about it, right? So within this class, our usage of styling, like the CSS style sheet, probably what it is, like we'll give you the style sheet and then you just have to include it into your HTML page. And then you'll pick up all this stuff. So, and if you do have to develop your own style sheet, I wouldn't be worrying too much about setting up these classes. You would do something more basic, right? This is a basic class. So you're probably going to be just focusing more on these. Okay. All right. So hopefully I didn't confuse you too much there. Just worry about this part here for your styling. Okay. All right. So there's this idea of escape symbols. Escape symbols would be something where, you know, the characters themselves, they're actually part of like what you would see in HTML. So for example, you have the less than and greater than sign, right? You have an ampersand sign, right? And of course you have quotes, right? So you have different types of things. I mean, I'm not too sure about like the sense and copyright and whatever, right? But, you know, these are special type of characters that you want to represent. They're not necessarily like on your keyboard or something like that. So how would you describe it? So within HTML, you're going to put in something like this. So in this case, I want to show the less than sign, right? But if I put a less than sign, depending on what the situation is, I could get it all screwed up with the tags and stuff. So for example, let's say I wanted to do some formatting in HTML page that shows HTML tags, right? So let's say I'm going to put in a tag and I don't want the HTML to get confused between like the tag that I actually want to display and the tag that will actually be used for formatting, right? So let me go back to my HTML here and I'll get this here. Let me see, where's the other page at? Okay, it's a little bit kind of overpowered by my my other one here. Let me just get this out. Actually, this will be better. Let me take this and I'm going to put it over here like that. Okay. And P, oops, P, and that, and then like that. Okay. So if I didn't do these escape characters, then it's going to confuse this P, right, with whatever other tag. Maybe I should do a B here, let's say. I did the B here. Okay. So then it starts to think, which B are you talking about, right? You're talking about the B I'm using to tell you to bold this thing, or am I talking about the B to kind of, maybe I'm trying to document, tags for HTML or something like that. So that's what these escape characters are for, right? This ampersand sign thing. And you'll see all of that here. Okay. So that's generally when you have to use these escape symbols, right? So either one, you're going to get it confused with, in this case, like the tags or like the quotes here, or it's like these quote unquote weird type of symbol type of things that you want to display, which you obviously don't have a keyboard equivalent for. Okay. All right. So we get into lists here. So this here is a list where each of the elements, in this case, these are football teams. You have LI and LI. So this is like each element of the list. Okay. So UL here, as it mentions here, is like an unordered list. Okay. Unordered. And you basically have to start tag, end tag, like you normally do for HTML. And then within that, you just list out each of the things you want to list. So you have something like this. Okay. And I'm going to go through the other lists in a second, but just a quick word here. So when you think about this for your exam, like how are you going to see this in your exam? Well, yeah, we're going to probably have you, show you like a list of stuff and say, okay, how would you write the HTML to do it, right? So I'll give you, like, in this case, 3 football teams and say, yeah, put that on your HTML page as an unordered list. Okay, then you're going to show me something like this right here. Okay. Now, the other thing you can do is like, well, okay, I want each of the elements to be red, or I want the second element to be red, or I want it to be bold, or I want to nest. I want to put another list in here. Maybe I'm going to have like an unordered list and then an ordered list, or vice versa, right? So you think about how you can nest these elements. That's probably how things are going to shake out when you do it, right? We're probably not going to just say, okay, here's 3 things, put it into an unordered list, right? So you have this, then you have each of your elements here that think about, like, what are the things that you can put in there? Can I put another list in there? Can I put a table in there? Like, whatever, try it out on your HTML, get some experience with that, okay? Chances are you're going to see something like that. And I'm going to get the tables in a second, so don't worry, okay? So, well, you just saw the unordered list. Well, now this is the ordered list. And the ordered list is not much different, except now you have these numbers here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so same thing. You follow the same convention. You have OL, OL, right? Ordered list. And then you have LI for each of the elements. Okay, so like it says here, instead of bullets, you're going to get numbers. Okay, numbers, right? Other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. I'll move this over to here. All right. Here. Okay. Now, see what I mean by about nesting here, right? So on the outside, you have the UL, right, for unordered list. And then within it, I have 2 ordered lists, right? So nesting, right? LI, LI, right? And then within the LI, I created another list, ordered list here, unordered list here. So pay attention to this, right? I wouldn't be surprised if you see some sort of nesting like this, okay? Now, the fact that I did you have these indentations here, you see the UL, it kind of looks nice here. And when you do it like in Notepad or something, you can kind of see it. I'll click on it and then it'll tell you what the ending matching tag that goes with it is. But if you go and look at it visually, it's easier for you to see it when you indent the stuff like this to kind of line it up. And, it's not just for neatness, it's just more so you can easily look at this, because this is probably a common area that a lot of people mess up on, is that they lose track of the tags to close it off, right? So you might have this UL here and you get it confused, let's say with this UL over here instead of with this UL, right? So you look at this one or this one, you're thinking, oh, this one goes to this one when it's not, right? And when you line it up like this and you indent it, it makes it a lot easier to figure out what your pair is when you visually look at it, okay? But take a look at this example and try to understand how we nested the list like this. This is kind of important, okay? So pay attention and let us know if you don't understand how this nesting happened here. Okay, so here's the overall unordered list, which is these right here. And then within that, you set up element, in this case, New York and Philadelphia, 2 different locations. Within that, you set up an unordered list, or actually an ordered list and an unordered list here. And you can see the different teams for each city. Okay, and then again, here you can see 1, 2, and then you can see the bullet here. Okay, so take a look at that. Try to do it on your own, right? It's not that much HTML here. Put that into your whichever thing you want to do, Notepad, or you want to do an HTML5 editor, something like that. Go ahead and try that out, right? Nest some things in there, okay? So for my extra credit this week, in order to help you have something to prepare for the exam and, something that, I can use for extra credit, why don't we do that? Take this, put this in here. I don't care if you want to keep the same text in here or not. You can leave it the same. I don't really care. But instead of just doing this, I want you to nest some other HTML elements. You can see I'm coming up into like images and stuff like that. So you can nest one list within another, which is what this is doing now. But then I want you to add in, like, let's say image, maybe you want to make this bold, maybe you want to make this like italics, whatever. Just so you get the feel for how to do this nesting here. Okay, so this is like an ordered list here. Make this an unordered list. Okay, and then vice versa here. This is an unordered list. Make this an ordered list. Okay, so once you do that, I think you should have a pretty good handle of nesting of these lists. Okay. Okay. This is kind of like just another way to structure on the list here. So you have this idea of a definitional list here, and it's like a DL, okay? And then you have DT here, right? So your overall outside list here is your DL, okay? And then within each one, you have DT, okay? And that's here. Okay, so in this case, it's Superman over here, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, right? So that's like your DTs here, right? And then you have the DDs, right? Which basically indents it a little bit and makes it the next line there, okay? So that's your data, okay? So it's basically another pair of things, right? So you have, like, in this case, you're talking about a person, and then kind of what is it that defines that person, right? So that's the structure. This goes from the outside of a DL, and then DT and DD, right? And then you can see it lines up like this, okay? All right, so this one is kind of common. I think did I show it in the sample HTML? I might have had in the sample HTML there. Yeah, actually, I think I did have this in the sample HTML. So anyway, you have your image and you say, where am I getting this image, right? And remember what I was saying about your absolute path, right? So this is basically the full URL to get to this JPEG, okay? Right, so the source equals, and then you say, this is where I'm getting it from, okay? And notice here, I'm setting the width, right? In this case, saying it's 250, all right? And so that's what that's what you want to do. If you have an image that you found somewhere, let's say on another web page or something, you want to get it, or another web server, I guess, you want to get it, that's what you do, okay? And like I said, I think I have on the sample. Let me go back to my sample, actually, see where that is. Sample. Yeah, there we go. There's the R over there. So if you need to get that, I did have it in my sample here. Remember how to download this guy here. All right, well, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I have to figure out how to get that download of the HTML in here. So I'll continue on so we don't make this video super long here. So anyway, as you can imagine, wherever the HTML tag is, that's where it's going to go within the within the document. Okay, and then there's the idea of floating left or floating right. Okay, so again, you'll be able to play with it, and I have to figure out how to get access to the HTML file. It seems a little crazy here, but I'll get that, don't worry. But it is up there. I think people have actually accessed the HTML file and download it. I'm like drawing a blank here and getting that HTML file down. Okay, so table is another important topic here. This is the last one, but this is an important one of doing the table here. Okay, so here, make this bigger so people can see a little bit. Let's make this. All right, hopefully that's a little bit better. So this is basically showing like the HTML and then showing what the table actually would look like on your page. So kind of shows it in one shot here. Move this over a little bit. Maybe I make this over here a little bit more. Is that better? Yeah, maybe something like that. Okay. All right. So main thing you remember here is at the top, you see number one, you see this table here. Right. So that says I'm going to put a table, right? And then you can see I have to set a border, right? How thick do I want that border to be? right? So in this case, I'm saying a border equals to 1. And then you say within each row, so each row is going to be like these, right? Each row on the table, as you can imagine, right? What are the data elements I'm going to have, right? So the first one, let's look at this first row here, TR, right? That's your first row. You have these things, TH, right? What does TH do? TH does exactly this, right? You can see it's a little bit different. It's basically like the header, right? So it's bold, right? We don't say bold, right? It's kind of like a package. So that's why you just call it TH and it automatically does it. Almost like you think about like H1, H2 and stuff like that. So you have this TH and you'll put that in here. Now, theoretically, I can actually put the TH down here, but generally you're thinking about the TH to be the top row. That's why you have this here, right? And it's just to make it bold, make it centered and stuff like that. So that's what happens when you put in each of those things to be TH. And so you have TH 4 times. So that means there's going to be 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then you have all the different column titles that you're going to put in there. Then the second row, weekend escape here, this is like each of the data elements, right? So what's the package name? It's weekend escape, right? What's the description? You have this description here, right? So that's what each of these things here, there's going to be 4 of them, right? And likewise, you keep on going and you'll see that's how you end up with this 3 rows with 4 elements within each row, okay? I don't know if it's going to cover it in here, but there's this idea of like having, let's say, I don't know, for whatever reason, you want the nights and cost per person, like this top part, you want these 2 spaces to be collapsed into one, right? Then you would use something called span, right? And it would span across these 2 columns, right? For whatever reason, we don't have that on here right now, but just look at that into your in your reading. You'll see you can play around a table. You can set up a span to span across 2 columns. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on here. No, not really. So remember, table, within the table, there's rows. That's what all these TRs are. And then within each of these rows, there's data elements. That's what those Ds are, TDs. Okay. I'm going to pause here a second just to kind of let it sink in a little bit. This is kind of important. This tables. Make sure you understand how to do tables here. And same thing as I said about like the lists and stuff. You can put stuff in here. You can put another table in here, right? So play around with it. We'll probably ask you again, some sort of nesting where we'll put some other stuff in here just to see if you're able to figure out how to take those components and put them in there and nest them in there, okay? Oh, here we go, call span, okay? So this is what I was saying here. You have to span it across 2 if you want to put those 2 columns together, okay? So this allows you to expand into multiple columns, right? And you can see here's your TH, here's your TH, and then call span equals to 2, right? Again, this is something I would suggest your personal notes, your little HTML sample file, call span equals to 2, okay? All right. All right, so here's another table example you can play around with here. Look what happened here. Call span 2, right? The languages came together at the top into one space here. That's what I meant by call span. Okay. All right, and the only other thing to note to add on here is what they added on was at the very top is this caption, right? So remember that, right? So you have the whole table here. If I want some caption at the top, you use this caption tag and that puts it at the top here. But everything else is the same, right? All the rows like this, all of the data elements here, and then what I was talking about here about the call span. Right, so these are the key things you want to try to understand and sample them, try them out on your own to create like your own tables and do something similar to this. Okay. All right, so you remember like, you know, a lot of this stuff from last week, and now you have all this gray stuff that was kind of what we covered for today. This little tables thing should have been gray also. And then that should be it for HTML5. Hopefully you're also going to go into this in more detail with your TAs this week also. All right, great. Thank you and have a good night.